My name is Joanna, and the night of my engagement party began with laughter that didn't sound like mine. The ballroom glittered in gold and champagne light. Everyone called it perfect, the flowers, the music, the promise of forever. But I already felt like a guest in my own celebration. Evan, my fiancé, stood in the center of it all, charming as always. He knew exactly how to hold a glass, how to talk to donors, how to make everyone believe our story. The problem was I wasn't sure it was still mine. When I arrived, I looked for our names on the seating chart near the entrance. The cards were written in delicate calligraphy. I found Evan Price, head table. Beneath it I expected mine. But my name wasn't there. It sat lower off to the side. Joanna Pierce, table 14. Singles. First I thought it was a typo. Then I saw the small sign on the far side of the room. Singles table. A place for leftover guests, college friends, and distant cousins. The sound around me turned sharp. Someone laughed near the bar. I turned toward Evan, who was shaking hands with his best man. My pulse quickened. I walked up to him, careful not to make a scene. "Evan," I said quietly, "there's a mistake on the seating chart." He barely looked at me. "What kind of mistake?" "They put me at the singles table." He smiled, that polished smile I used to love. "Oh, that? Yeah, that's intentional." I froze. "Intentional?" He shrugged. "Mom thought it'd look odd if we sat together before the ceremony. Tradition, optics, whatever she called it. Don't make a thing out of it, Joanna. You're too emotional about details." Too emotional. The phrase he always used to turn me into the problem. I forced my face to stay calm. "It's my engagement party. And that's why you should relax and enjoy it," he said, already turning away. "It's just a table. Don't embarrass yourself." Embarrass myself. I walked to table 14 near the back. People I barely knew filled the seats. Evan's coworkers, some single friends laughing too loudly. The sign in the center mocked me. Singles in silver letters. A man across the table smiled. "Aren't you the bride-to-be? Shouldn't you be up front?" I smiled thinly. "Apparently not." The photographer passed by, paused, then took my picture with an awkward laugh. I smiled for the camera, the kind of smile that cracks at the edges. The speeches began. Evan stood at the front, microphone in hand. His voice carried easily, smooth and confident. "They say behind every great man is a woman keeping him in line," he joked. "Mine's here somewhere. I think the staff hit her so she doesn't correct my math." Laughter filled the room. I stared at my hands, my ring catching the light. It didn't shine the way it had yesterday. Then he gestured toward me. "There she is. My beautiful fiancée, Joanna." Dozens of eyes turned. Cameras flashed. I smiled again, that trained, practiced, frozen smile. When the applause faded, I slipped out into the hallway. The air outside the ballroom was cold and still. The muffled laughter from inside sounded like it belonged to strangers. I leaned against the wall and let the truth sink in. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. He had made me invisible. At my own celebration. My phone buzzed. A message from my friend Hannah. "They sat you where? Are you okay?" I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Not yet." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, feeling the quiet shift inside me. That was the moment something in me changed, the moment humiliation turned into calculation. Because what Evan didn't realize was that I had read every line of the venue contract myself. He'd handed it to me, said, "You're better at the boring stuff." So I signed it. Under my name. Alone. And buried in that fine print was a clause no one remembered but me. The person who signed, the one paying the deposit, held full authority over cancellations, refunds, and usage of event space. Not Evan. Not his family. Me. I straightened my dress, wiped my hands, and walked back toward the laughter. If they wanted to treat me like a guest, they'd get exactly that. A guest with control of the entire venue. And before this night was over, every single one of them would remember who the bride really was. I went home that night long after the music ended. My cheeks still ached from smiling. My fingers smelled like roses and champagne, but the inside of me felt hollow. I left Evan shaking hands with his guests, too busy accepting congratulations to notice I was gone. At home, I set my heels by the door and stared at the engagement dress still shining under the hallway light. It looked like proof of something that no longer existed. I poured a glass of water and opened my laptop. The venue contract waited in my inbox. I'd scanned it weeks ago after the manager, Claire, sent us the final copy. Evan had laughed when I asked to keep a digital version. "You're adorable," he'd said. "Always so cautious." Cautious had saved me before. It was about to save me again. I scrolled through the contract line by line. Payment schedule. Damaged deposit. Cancellation clause. Then my eyes froze on one sentence I remembered noticing the first time. The individual providing the deposit shall be recognized as the contracting party and retains full authority over event use, schedule, and cancellation. The deposit had come from my account. Evan insisted on it. "We'll merge finances after the wedding, babe." He said it like it was romantic. Now it felt like foreshadowing. That meant the event, the booking, the entire payment plan legally belonged to me. Not Evan. Not his mother. Me. I took screenshots of every page, highlighting my name beside the signature line. Joanna Pierce. Contracting party. For once, the fine print favored the invisible woman. The next morning, Evan texted like nothing had happened. "Evan. Great night, babe. Everyone said it was classy. Mom's thrilled." Me, she should be. She planned it. Evan. What's that supposed to mean? Me. Nothing. Just noticing things. He replied with a heart emoji. I didn't answer. I spent the day gathering details. Invoices, emails, even the florist's messages. Every vendor listed me as the client. Evan had delegated everything, bragging to friends that he didn't do logistics. I did. And that made every receipt, every booking, every single element trace back to me. By afternoon, I had a folder labeled engagement party, full control. That night, I met Hannah for coffee. She's been my best friend since college. Blunt, loyal, allergic to pretension. She walked in, took one look at my face and said, "He did something." I told her about the seating, about the laughter, about his mother's tone. She whistled low. "He sat you at the singles table at your own engagement party? That's an art form in humiliation." I nodded. She leaned in. "So what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I have something they don't." "What?" "Authority." Her brow furrowed. "Meaning?" I showed her the contract. She read the clause twice, then looked up, grinning like a wolf. "Joanna, you own the party." I smiled for the first time that day. Exactly. We sat there, the cafe hum around us, while an idea began to form, quiet, elegant, lawful. The kind of revenge that doesn't shout. It signs. Hannah stirred her coffee. "You could cancel the wedding. Cancel everything." "I could," I said. "But that would make me look emotional." Her smile widened. "So what then?" "I'm going to remind them what happens when they mistake grace for weakness." When I left, the sky had turned the color of slate. The air smelled like rain and endings. Evan called that night. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," he said casually. "Mom wants to confirm the guest list for the rehearsal dinner. She's thinking of doing assigned seats again." I said nothing. "Joanna." "I heard you," I said. He laughed softly. "Don't sound so serious. You looked beautiful last night, by the way. Everyone said so." "Everyone but me." "Thanks," I said quietly. "It was unforgettable." He didn't catch the edge in my tone. "That's my girl," he said, then hung up. When the line went dead, I whispered to myself, "Not anymore." The next day I called the venue. Claire, the manager, answered on the second ring. "Joanna, wonderful to hear from you. Are you ready to finalize the wedding date?" I smiled. "Actually, I have a few questions about our previous booking." "Of course," she said. "The engagement party? Everything was perfect, wasn't it?" "Visually, yes," I said. "But I'd like to review some details. Could you confirm the contract holder on file?" She clicked her keyboard. "Certainly. Contracting party, Joanna Pierce." "And that means," I said, "that all decisions regarding future use, cancellations, or schedule adjustments must be approved by me personally." "That's correct," Claire said. "Is there a problem?" "Not yet," I said softly. "But there will be." When I hung up, I felt the strange calm of someone who has stopped bleeding. The first bruise was humiliation. The second was silence. Now came precision. Because if they thought the singles table was a joke, they hadn't yet learned what happens when the punchline holds the contract. The next morning I woke before sunrise. My phone blinked with unread messages, Evan, his mother, even my bridesmaids chatting about how funny the party had been. None of them understood the cruelty behind that joke. I brewed coffee and opened the folder on my desktop labeled engagement. Evidence. Inside were copies of every invoice, every booking, every deposit confirmation, all under my name. Evan hadn't paid a cent. He'd said, "You're better with money, Joanna." What he meant was, "You'll clean up my mess if it goes wrong." I opened my email and wrote to the venue manager, Claire. "Hi, Claire. I'd like to review the terms of our contract and confirm who holds authority over future event use." She replied within minutes. "Of course. The contracting party on file is you, Ms. Pierce. All schedule or cancellation requests must come from your written approval." I stared at her message, feeling the faintest smile tug at my lips. Later that day, I met Hannah again at her office. She worked in event management, so she understood the language of contracts. She closed the door and said, "All right, strategist. What's next?" I laid the contract on her desk. "This is leverage," I said. "But I need to use it right. If I cancel now, Evan's family will spin the story, say I overreacted." "Then don't cancel," she said slowly. "Redirect." That word clicked into place like a key in a lock. Hannah pulled out a notepad. "If you technically own the contract, you can modify it. Change dates, guest counts, layout, anything. Maybe use that for something bigger." "Like what?" "Like letting them humiliate themselves publicly." Her eyes glinted. "You said they care about appearances. So what happens if those appearances start working against them?" By afternoon the plan had shape. I wouldn't storm out or yell. I'd be polite, legal, unshakable. I'd let their arrogance collapse on itself. That evening Evan texted again. "Evan, Mom wants to know if you're okay. You were quiet after the party." "Me? Just tired." "Evan, you worry too much. Everything's perfect." "Me, yes," I typed. "Perfect." Then I forwarded Claire's email to my private account and printed a copy for my folder. Over the next few days I played the part, the calm fiancé, the easygoing planner. Evan's family mistook my silence for forgiveness. His mother even sent me photos of wedding centerpiece ideas. Each message ended with, "I know you'll handle the boring logistics, dear." And I did. Meticulously. Every vendor they bragged about, the florist, the band, the photographer, all had contracts in my name. I confirmed each one, made subtle changes to payment schedules, even reserved the venue's second ballroom under a different project label. When Claire asked what the second booking was for, I smiled. Just a private event. Same date. Separate guest list. She didn't question it. She just filed it under Joanna Pierce, private reservation. It was almost too easy. At night, I practiced what I would say when the time came. No shouting. No tears. Just a quiet declaration of ownership. My father once told me, "Real revenge doesn't need an audience. It needs precision." And for the first time I understood what he meant. Evan called late one evening, his voice warm with fake affection. "I've been thinking about the vows," he said. "You'll cry, won't you?" I smiled into the dark. "You'll see." He laughed, not knowing those words weren't a promise. They were a warning. The next week unfolded like theater rehearsal. Everyone playing their parts, unaware the script had changed. Evan bragged about seating charts. His mother bragged about her decor. I nodded, smiled, and added every detail to a spreadsheet labeled Final Performance. Claire, the venue manager, sent me updated logistics. She was efficient, professional, and blissfully unaware that half of what she was organizing was about to become the stage for poetic justice. Evan texted constantly about the wedding. I answered just enough to keep him calm. He liked control, but he loved applause more. He needed everyone to think we were perfect. He didn't notice I'd stopped saying we. By Friday my plan was airtight. The engagement party fiasco had been a warning. They'd made me the punchline. The wedding would make them the lesson. Hannah came over that evening, wine in hand. "So," she said, "how does the great reveal work?" I handed her the updated contract and my laptop screen showing the venue floor plan. The main ballroom stays booked for the wedding. The secondary hall is mine for the same night, different guest list. I've invited every vendor they owe money to and every relative they conveniently forgot to pay back. Her eyebrows shot up. You're turning the venue into a mirror. Exactly, I said. 2 rooms. 1 celebration. 1 truth. She whistled low. Remind me never to cross you. I smiled faintly. Don't give me a reason. Saturday morning, Evan called sounding cheerful. Mom wants to finalize the payment schedule for the open bar. Can you handle it? It's already handled, I said. He laughed. That's why I love you, reliable Joanna. Reliable. The word that had always chained me to his comfort. The following week, I arranged catering deposits to be split, 1 under the Pierce Hollis wedding, 1 under private event, confidential. Both payments came from my account, but 1 would be refunded later. I made sure every vendor knew that any instructions must come only from me, the contracting party. By the time the invitations went out, I was 2 steps ahead. Evan's mother had no idea that her name wasn't even authorized to make changes to the guest list. She just assumed her guidance carried power. The night before the final planning meeting, Hannah called. You're sure you want to do this publicly? Yes, I said. Because humiliation thrives in private. So will justice. When the day came, I arrived at the venue early. Claire greeted me with a polite smile. We've prepared both rooms per your instructions. I looked around, polished floors, glowing chandeliers, 2 sets of name cards. Perfect, I said. Let's make sure everyone gets exactly what they ordered. At 4, Evan and his family arrived. His mother's voice carried across the hall before I even turned. Joanna, you didn't tell me you changed the flower arrangements. I wanted something simpler, I said. She frowned. It's a bit understated. Sometimes quiet is stronger, I said softly. Evan kissed my cheek, distracted. Mom's just nervous. Big day. I smiled. Bigger than she knows. He laughed, brushing it off. As the evening crowd began arriving, Claire handed me the clipboard. Ready for both check-ins? Yes, I said. Keep the secondary entrance discreet until I signal. She nodded. By 6 o'clock, the main ballroom buzzed with chatter, photographers, glittering guests. Everyone expecting a flawless celebration of love. Evan basked in it. His mother soaked in the attention. And I waited. Because precision, my father once said, is the difference between revenge and chaos. The music swelled, champagne glasses clinked, and for a while, the evening played out like a fairy tale written by someone else. Evan worked the room with his usual charm, arm around me when the cameras turned our way, fingers already gone when they didn't. His mother floated from table to table, narrating her own version of events. How she picked the menu, how she coordinated the floral tones. Each time she said, "My wedding," people smiled politely and pretended not to notice the bride shrinking beside her. I smiled too, but mine had purpose. At precisely 7:30, Claire appeared at my side with a quiet nod, the signal. The second ballroom was ready. Guests had started arriving through the alternate entrance. Hannah, a handful of vendors still waiting for unpaid invoices, 2 photographers from the local society page, and of course the venue's legal liaison. I had built the second event to look identical, same linens, same centerpieces, except for one key detail. The guest list was entirely composed of people who knew the truth. It was a mirror but cleaner. When Evan raised his glass for the toast, his mother whispered loudly, "Oh, he looks so handsome up there." He smiled at her, then at me. "To Joanna," he began, "who will soon be my wife, and who, despite her dramatic streak, somehow makes life interesting." Laughter rippled across the room. I felt Hannah's warning echo in my mind. "You're sure you want to do this publicly?" Yes, I was sure. When the applause died down, I stepped forward and took the microphone. "Thank you," I said softly. "I have something to add." Evan blinked, surprised. His mother's smile froze. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming," I continued, "and for celebrating a night that's been eye-opening." I turned to Claire. "Can we open the second set of doors?" Evan frowned. "What second doors?" Claire hesitated, but I nodded once. She gestured to the staff, and 2 large doors at the back of the hall swung open, revealing the adjoining ballroom. Gasps scattered through the crowd. It was identical, same lighting, same stage, but filled with an entirely different audience. The caterer Evan's family hadn't paid, the florist they'd ghosted, and a dozen others who had once been part of the real wedding plan before being discarded. Evan's mother went pale. "What is this?" "This," I said calmly, "is what happens when you underestimate the woman whose name is on the contract." Evan's laugh faltered. "Joanna, what are you talking about?" I handed him a printed copy of the venue agreement. "The one who paid for tonight, who legally owns this booking, who can cancel or modify any event at her discretion. That's me." He scanned the page, color draining from his face. "You're kidding." "No," I said. "But don't worry. I'm not canceling anything." A murmur spread. Phones lifted discreetly. "I'm just correcting the record," I continued. "You wanted a show. You've got one. This is the engagement party you earned." Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Joe, not here." "Exactly here," I said. "Because this is where you made the joke that I didn't belong at my own table." His mother hissed. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll regret it on my own terms." The crowd watched in stunned silence as I placed the microphone back on its stand. Behind me, the vendors began to clap, slow, deliberate, echoing off the walls. In that moment, I wasn't humiliated. I wasn't the forgotten fiancée at the singles table. I was the woman who rewrote the seating chart. And this was only the beginning. For several long seconds, no one moved. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the low rumble of whispers spreading like wildfire. Evan's confident smile had vanished. His mother's hand gripped her wine glass so tightly I half expected it to shatter. Then chaos. Guests turned, craning their necks toward the second ballroom. Someone gasped when they recognized the head caterer. The one Evan's mother had fired months ago for being unprofessional. He was now raising a glass to me. "Lovely party, Miss Pierce," he called. The laughter that followed wasn't kind. Evan's father tried to smooth things over, stepping forward with forced diplomacy. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," he began, but I cut in quietly. "No misunderstanding. Just clarity." I turned to the crowd. For months, every vendor here was told they'd be paid by this family. They weren't. Every cost was transferred to my account, without my consent. Tonight's contract, the venue, the decor, even the ring insurance, all in my name. I thought I was planning a future. Turns out I was funding a show. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Evan stepped closer, whispering through gritted teeth, "You're making a scene." I smiled slightly. "No, Evan. I'm making a statement." He hissed, "We can talk about this privately." "I tried private," I said. "You turned that into a performance too." Evan's mother finally found her voice. "You don't understand how embarrassing this is for our family." "Good," I said softly. "Now we're even." I nodded toward Claire, who had been standing awkwardly near the doorway. "Please continue serving the guests in the second hall. They deserve their evening." She blinked, caught between confusion and admiration. "Of course, Miss Pierce." As she left, I felt the weight in the room shift. People were whispering now, moving, stepping toward the other ballroom. The crowd that had once orbited Evan and his family was starting to drift toward the truth. Evan ran a hand through his hair. "You're insane," he muttered. "You just ruined everything." "No," I said steady. "I revealed everything." He laughed, brittle, defensive. "You think this makes you look strong? You look petty." "Petty?" I echoed. "You humiliated me in front of 200 people at our own engagement party, and I'm petty?" He didn't answer. So I leaned in just enough for him to hear the last sentence meant for him alone. "You should have read the fine print, Evan. Because when you made me your assistant, you forgot I was also the one signing the checks." His jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." I straightened. "You're right. I regret not doing it sooner." The audience around us began to applaud again. Hesitant at first, then growing bolder. Hannah was in the back, eyes glistening, mouthing finally. Evan's father grabbed his wife's arm. "We're leaving." But Claire appeared again, polite as ever. "Actually, sir, the client on this contract has requested that all departing guests use the east exit, for liability reasons." Her calm tone was a masterpiece. Evan's mother sputtered. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted. "My event, my rules." They stormed toward the door, humiliated. Cameras flashed. Not paparazzi, but guess who couldn't resist capturing the downfall of the perfect couple? As the doors closed behind them, the noise in the second ballroom swelled into laughter, music, and relief. The people who had been silenced finally had space to breathe. I took the microphone again, voice steady but trembling at the edges. "For those still here," I said, "thank you for witnessing what truth looks like when it stops apologizing." They cheered, and for the first time in months I didn't shrink. The night was no longer about love. It was about liberation. By the time I got home, my phone was already vibrating nonstop. Missed calls, messages, notifications lighting up like fireworks after a storm. I ignored them all. I poured a glass of water, sat on the edge of my bed, and just listened to the silence, heavy, clean mine. 2 a.m. I finally checked my messages. The first dozen were from Evan. "Evan, you went too far." "Evan, we can fix this if you apologize publicly." "Evan, my mother is hysterical. You embarrassed her in front of her friends." "Evan, you ruined my reputation." I didn't reply. Then came the messages from Hannah. "Hannah, the videos are already circulating." "Hannah, everyone's talking about the 2 rooms." "Hannah, you looked untouchable." I exhaled. The internet was faster than guilt. By morning, the story had already hit a local wedding blog. "Bride outsmarts groom's family with double-booked engagement party." The headline made me laugh, though the word bride felt misplaced now. Evan showed up at my apartment around noon. I didn't open the door, but his voice carried through the wood, calm, measured, rehearsed. "Joe, you made your point. You embarrassed me, fine. But you also humiliated yourself. Let's end this like adults. We can tell people it was just a misunderstanding." I leaned against the door, silent. He knocked again, harder. "Come on, Joe. You don't want this to get ugly." That's when I opened the door. Slowly. He froze. Maybe he expected tears. Instead, I looked rested. "Ugly," I repeated. "It already is. You just finally noticed." He exhaled sharply. "You think this wins you something? You think humiliating me fixes what's broken?" "I didn't break it," I said. "You did, the moment you thought you could make me small enough to fit inside your story." He shook his head. "You can't prove half the things you're saying." "I don't need to," I said quietly. "Everyone saw what matters." His jaw tightened. "You'll regret this when you realize you just destroyed your own engagement." I smiled faintly. "Evan, I didn't destroy it. I ended it." He stared at me for a long second, then turned, muttering something under his breath as he walked away. The sound of his footsteps fading down the hall was the sweetest rhythm I'd ever heard. I closed the door and texted Hannah. "Me, it's done." "Hannah, finally. You okay?" "Me, better than okay." That afternoon, I met Claire at the venue to settle the final invoice. She greeted me with a smile that was half admiration, half disbelief. "I've worked here 12 years, she said. "I've never seen anyone use a venue contract as a sword." "Technically," I said. "I just used it as a mirror." She laughed softly. "Whatever it was brilliant. Everyone's talking about it." As I signed the last receipt, she hesitated. "What are you going to do next?" I looked around the empty hall, the same room where I'd once imagined my perfect future. "Start over," I said. "Somewhere with fewer chandeliers." When I walked outside, the sunlight hit like forgiveness. I didn't feel angry anymore, just clear. The engagement ring was still on my finger. I twisted it once, then slid it off. The diamond caught the light for a moment before I dropped it into the small velvet box and closed the lid. In that silence, something heavy inside me finally let go. By Monday, the story had spread far beyond our town. The local wedding blog's post was picked up by a lifestyle magazine, then by a morning talk show's website. The title changed each time. Bride outsmarts groom's family. Then woman turns humiliation into justice at her own engagement party. The internet didn't care about context. Cared about the spectacle. And for once, the spectacle favored me. I woke up to hundreds of messages. Old classmates, distant cousins, complete strangers all cheering me on. Words like iconic, brilliant, and legendary filled my screen. Then came the other half. People who thought I'd gone too far. People who believed women should forgive and move on. I didn't reply to any of them. I'd spent my whole life managing perception. That was over. The first real consequence hit mid-morning. A call from the venue's owner. "Ms. Pierce," he said carefully. "I just wanted to say your conduct was within your legal rights. Your contract gave you full control. Still, the board wants to know if you'd consider doing a feature with us about standing up for yourself, using our venue as an example of empowerment." I almost laughed. "You want to turn this into marketing?" He chuckled. "That's how the world spins now." I thanked him and declined. I didn't want my closure turned into content. Later that day, Hannah called. "So bad news," she said, though her tone didn't sound sorry. "Evan's family is threatening to sue you for defamation." "Defamation?" I repeated. "For quoting their own invoices?" She laughed. "Exactly. Their lawyers already realized it won't stick. It's all noise. But, Joe, you should see their faces on social media. They're trying so hard to look untouched." I opened my laptop and checked. Evan's mother had posted a photo, her smiling beside a vase of white lilies, captioned, "Grace under pressure. Always." It had 50 comments of sympathy. I stared at it for a moment, then shut the screen. "Let them keep pretending," I said. "It's the only stage they have left." But revenge, even righteous revenge, comes with echoes. That night I sat alone with my phone, scrolling back through photos from when things still looked pure. Before the secrets, before the lies. There was one from the night Evan proposed, his eyes bright, my laughter real. I almost deleted it. But then I didn't. It wasn't a wound anymore, it was proof. Proof of who I was before I learned to draw lines. The next morning I met with Hannah at a cafe. She handed me a stack of papers. "Your refund," she said. The vendors pooled together and decided to waive the remaining balance out of solidarity. Said it was the most satisfying event they'd ever worked. I blinked. "They didn't have to. They wanted to," she said. "You gave every woman in that room permission to stop apologizing." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I just wanted to survive it. "Yeah," Hannah said softly. "That's what makes it powerful." For the first time I allowed myself to laugh, not bitterly, not bravely, just freely. When I got home, a letter was waiting on my doorstep. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Evan's mother. I opened it slowly. "Joanna, I can't believe how cruelly you chose to repay our kindness. We took you in as one of our own. We guided you. You embarrassed us instead. Evan is devastated. But I still hope time softens your heart. Maybe one day you'll understand that family is about forgiveness." I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the shredder. As the paper disappeared, I whispered, "Family is about respect." By the end of that week, Evan finally broke his silence online. A short, perfectly curated post. "Sometimes people choose revenge over reconciliation. I wish her peace." 5 words crafted like a weapon wrapped in virtue. The comments were predictable. Sympathy, pity, admiration for his grace. I read them all with a kind of detached amusement. He was still trying to control the story, still convinced he could sculpt public memory into something softer, something that made him look like the victim. So I did something he didn't expect. Nothing. No reply, no statement, no interview. Just silence. Because silence in the right hands is louder than any defense. 3 days later, the magazine that had first covered the story reached out again. "Joanna," the journalist said, "we've confirmed several vendors that were underpaid by Evan's family. Would you like to go on record?" I hesitated. Only if it helps them. The next article didn't center me. It centered the people he'd used. The florist who never got her final payment, the photographer who was told she'd been accidentally dropped from the vendor list. Each one shared a similar story. Money funneled, promises broken, the Pierce name at the center. The truth had found its own momentum. That night I got a text from Evan. "Evan, you really think this makes you a hero?" "Me no. Just free." He didn't reply. But Hannah sent me a screenshot from a private group chat full of mutual acquaintances. In it, someone had written, "Joanna didn't destroy him. She just stopped hiding what was already rotten. I smiled. For once, people were speaking for me, not against me, not over me, but for me. Meanwhile, the venue owner called again. "You won't believe this," he said, laughing. "We've had 3 new clients cite your event as inspiration for backup justice planning. We might rename the double booking clause the Pierce provision." I laughed too. That's darkly poetic. But beneath the humor there was something cleaner. A strange peace. One evening I visited the empty venue alone. Claire let me in after hours. The chandeliers were dimmed. The air still carried faint traces of lilies and champagne. "This room looks different when it's quiet," I said. Claire smiled softly. "It looks honest now." I walked across the floor, remembering where the singles table had sat. The cheap joke that started it all. I could still picture their smug smiles, their whispered amusement. And now I realized that humiliation had been the fire I needed. Before leaving, I handed Claire a small envelope. "For the staff who worked that night. A thank you." She opened it, eyes widening. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," I said. "Not for closure. For gratitude." When I stepped outside, the night air felt crisp, weightless. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to anyone else's story. I was writing mine again. Back home, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started a new document. Title: The Fine Print. How to Protect Yourself from the People Who Pretend to Love You. I didn't know if it would be a blog, a book, or just therapy through words. I only knew this: I wanted other women to know how to fight back with intelligence, not rage. With contracts, not chaos. Because revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's education. And sometimes it's just survival turned into strategy. It has been 6 months since the engagement that never became a wedding. 6 months since the night I took my seat at the so-called singles table and turned humiliation into power. Time has a way of softening the noise but sharpening the truth. People still whisper about what happened. At first, it bothered me, being the subject of gossip instead of sympathy. But now, I understand that whispers only follow those who leave echoes behind. The venue's story became a quiet legend. The Joanna Clause is what the staff call it now. A reminder that contracts matter more than social hierarchies. Brides message me online asking how I stayed calm, how I planned so precisely. I tell them the truth. Calm isn't natural. It's a choice. One you make the second you realize fear is what they count on. Evan moved cities, according to Hannah. His family sold their event company, rebranding under a different name. Occasionally, his face shows up in articles about resilience or grace after scandal. I never clicked them. You cannot heal by rereading your own scars. Hannah, on the other hand, thrived. She launched her own planning firm, one built around transparency, legal clarity, and fairness. Her first tagline made me laugh. "We don't just plan events. We protect them." She asked if I wanted to invest. I said yes. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the girl I was before all this, the one who wanted approval more than peace. I wish I could tell her that boundaries are not walls. They are doors you learn to lock when kindness gets mistaken for weakness. The ring I once wore now sits in a glass box on my shelf. Not as a memory of loss, but as a lesson. That promises without respect are just jewelry. One evening, while cleaning, I found a copy of the original venue contract, the one I had annotated in red ink. My handwriting looped under the decisive sentence. Any violation of dignity or agreed seating plan gives the client authority to terminate the event at will. I traced those words with my finger and smiled. That one line had changed everything. Dad used to say, "The fine print isn't small to trick you, it's small to test you." Now I finally understood what he meant. I still believe in love. Just not the kind that demands you shrink to fit someone's comfort. Love should never come with an audience that laughs at your expense. A few weeks ago, I attended another engagement, this time as a guest. The couple was young, hopeful, glowing. When they toasted each other, I saw no arrogance, no cruelty, just partnership. And I smiled because maybe I had to lose my fairy tale to learn what truth feels like. As the night ended, someone recognized me. "You're that woman, right? The one from the story?" I nodded. They laughed softly. "You really did it. You showed everyone." I thought about that for a moment. "No," I said. "I showed myself." Driving home, the city lights looked softer than they used to. I rolled down the window and let the cool wind erase the last traces of that old fear. The one that said I needed their approval to matter. Because I don't. My story isn't about revenge anymore. It's about reclamation. About taking back the version of myself they tried to make small. About knowing that the table they sat me at was never the one I belonged to. If you're listening, remember this. You don't need to set the room on fire to reclaim your seat. Sometimes you just rewrite the contract and make sure they're the ones left standing. So yes, they sat me at the singles table at my own engagement party. But what they didn't realize was that I was already single-minded. And when they tried to laugh at me, I turned their laughter into leverage. Because revenge isn't about rage. It's about remembering who you are. And making sure they never forget it. If my story stayed with you, subscribe. More stories are coming, stories about women who stop apologizing for being the main character. Because sometimes the quietest revenge is signing your own name on the last page. And knowing you finally own the ending.